Hi, I'm Jeanette Lenoir with ePluribus America, here with another edition of EPA Live. Today, my guest is Deidre Farmer Pillman, Executive Director of the Restitution Study Group based in New York. The group is leading a lawsuit to stop the return of Benin bronzes from the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. to Nigeria. Welcome, Deidre. Thank you so much for your time today and to talk about this important topic. I really appreciate it. Welcome to EPA Live.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette. I am happy to be here, and thank you. Um, we are engaged in litigation against the Smithsonian for the return of Benin bronzes. In particular, our interest is in bronzes that were made with metal. The Benin Kingdom was paid in exchange for enslaved Africans for 300 years during the transatlantic slave trade. The
I
metal,
see.
yeah. The
Yeah.
metal is this. This is called the Manila.
Mhm.
And so 50 of these bought a woman and 57 bought a man. These were melted and cast into relics similar to this. This is plastic, but this is a sample of Benin bronze. There are about
Mhm.
10,000 of these relics dispersed around the world, worth the total of $30 billion. But the Smithsonian had 29 that they gave away to the Benin Kingdom in violation of U.S. law, and we wanted to stop that.
Um, Before we delve really into this serious lawsuit and this very serious topic, can you tell us a little bit about the restitution group? I know you all are based in New York, but is this the typical type of work you do? Is to keep enslaved people's relics here, African relics here, ancient artifacts here? Uh, what exactly is the mission of the restitution study group?
We are an institute that engages in efforts of targeting what we call complicit entities. That's entities that played a role in enslaving Africans and forcing us to be transplanted in the Americas. So it could be a corporation, which is where most of our work has been. We've sued many corporations around the nation for their role, and actually around the world for their role in enslaving Africans or playing some role in it. And it could be, any other entity. At this time, it has to do with the Benin Kingdom and these relics that are now located in museums, including the Smithsonian. Um, so we focus on anyone complicit in slavery.
And your group has recently won a couple of awards for the work that you are championing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, right now we're focusing on the Benin bronzes. Uh,
Hmm.
and because the issue is a little bit complicated, we felt it was important to create a video explaining why it is that we oppose the return of some of these Benin bronzes, actually, most of them. And so the film is called They Belong to All of Us, the slave trade, the Benin bronze slave trade story. We won two awards in Cannes at the film festival in they call it March du Film, which is the market, the film market. We won Best Film for Social Purpose,
Hmm.
and also just second place, one of the film best short film on cell phone. So this is about cell phone cinema. Part of the film is shot on cell phone, and so we were able to be a part of it, and it was just an amazing experience to be in Cannes.
Yeah, it really is. So I'd like to show it. It's not too long. It's a little over 6 minutes. So I would like to play that, and then I want to jump into the why behind this lawsuit and the project. And as we spoke a little earlier, I was telling you I was a little perplexed about the mission of your organization, because I was like, well, don't we really want them to go back to Africa? But the way you explained it really broadened my horizon, and it was a light bulb moment for me. So once we watched the video, I believe our listeners, the audience, will have a better understanding of the why behind this mission and the lawsuit. So let's get ourselves together here.
The 16th to 19th century bronzes were made with a manila. This was a currency for the transatlantic slave trade. This is a Benin bronze. It was cast from melted manillas, a currency the Kingdom of Benin was paid in exchange for people they sold to Europeans in the transatlantic slave trade. As many as 10,000 Benin bronzes exist. One like this one sold for $13 million in 2016. They were taken from Africa by the British Navy in 1897 in retaliation for the Kingdom of Benin killing unarmed British Navy officers and African pilots. The loss of the Benin bronzes in 1897 ended centuries of enslaved people being used as human sacrifices at ancestral altars and in villages by the Kingdom of Benin. The bronzes were sold to museums and collectors around the world.
The Benin bronzes ended up in museums around the world. More than 900 are still here in the British Museum. But now there is a movement from some to return them.
It was wrong to take the bronzes. It was wrong to keep them.
Each of the objects so taken away represented an ancestor in captivity, not just an artwork.
Now the slave trader heirs of the Benin Kingdom want them back, but they don't want to share them with the descendants of the people they enslaved. Museums are planning to repatriate them to Nigeria. But the heirs of the people they enslaved claim co-ownership because the enslaved paid for them with their lives. And the heirs of the enslaved are still paying for them with their sufferings.
Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out.
He fired a total of 7 rounds into the car.
Me out of my own car.
Get out of the car!
And then you
I
gonna
will
stun
light
me?
you up. Get out! Don't touch me.
The arrest was captured by a cell phone camera. Within seconds, Officer Daniel Pantaleo had wrapped his arms around Garner's neck.
Cena ainda morre com tiro de fuzil da polícia do estado dentro.
Prosecutors say Officer Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, including 2 minutes and 53 seconds after Floyd had become unresponsive.
I'll have to admit that is incredibly um, emotional. It is a very emotional thing for me, and I'm sure for all of us. Everybody who has a direct connection to this history, it still hurts. It's still aggravating where we're at. But what you're doing is so important to um, the trajectory of what we're trying to do, which is not just have recognition of what has happened to us, but some sort of accountability and recovery and repair, reparations. Um, so if you could talk a little bit more about the why behind this mission to keep the Benin bronzes here, that would be great.
Well, sure. I mean, the why is pretty simple. We are still suffering from the vestiges of slavery. I mean, the enslavement did not just end with our ancestors being stolen, but the vestiges continue, and which is the reason why we felt it was important to show what we mean: the homelessness, the lack of protection in certain crises, like for example Katrina, uh, the killing of Emmett Till, the lynching of our ancestors. There's just so much that we're still suffering from today, connected to being enslaved for these bronzes to be made for 300 years. And let me just say, the enslaved, we're taught so many things about the slave trade. We're taught, oh, we are all royalty, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you can see what's happening with my screen, but there's some craziness. But that we are all born from royalty, and that we all played a role in the slave trade. All of this kind of stuff, and what we've learned from the research is that none of this is true. There were royal families that were engaged in enslaving us, some from Europe and some from Africa. They had access to the resources to engage in the transatlantic slave trade, and so these were very powerful people that played a role in enslaving us. Our ancestors were the victims, and so we feel that it's important to get that message out, so that our children are not misled into thinking we are we were all royals, and this kind of, it's romanticizing the slave trade. So education has to happen, right? We want to make sure that folks are educated about the history. Now, what's happening with the Smithsonian is that they have made a decision to repatriate relics gratis in violation of the law. We're not just trying to keep these bronzes for descendants of enslaved Africans. They are violating the law. The U.S. law only allows for the transfer of the bronzes to institutions within the Smithsonian system. That's for the free transfer. If it's going outside of the Smithsonian system, there is supposed to be consideration. The entity is supposed to pay, or there has to be a federal law passed that allows for the transfer. And these things have not happened. The bronzes are worth about $200 million. There are 29 more that are worth roughly the same amount. And the Smithsonian gave them away. Now, part of the reason why it was possible to give them away is probably related to the reason why Nairi Blankenberg is no longer with the Smithsonian.
Let's listen to her rationale behind making this move.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when I came to the museums and I saw them on display, and I saw that they were up, I got the reaction I tend to have when I see work that I think is being procured unethically by museums on display. It's really it really makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm South African, and I've traveled to museums around the world, and I'm very sensitive to this issue. And when I see objects that are unethically taken or stolen or looted on display in Western museums, it makes me feel like I don't belong in that museum. And so it was really important for me that they come down immediately or as soon as I could, so that other visitors who came to the museum wouldn't feel uncomfortable or that their cultural heritage or something that perhaps didn't belong to the museum was on display.
I'm sure you see a lot of racism there.
As you can see, I mean, we had always presented presented them with an explanation. So I think the previous directors and curators had a particular approach to this. And so it was an explanation that these objects were taken during the raid of 1897 and an explanation of their history. And we have worked with the Kingdom of Benin for many, many years. We did a project with them, the Solomon Alonge exhibit, on their Royal Court photographer. You know, many of our staff has a very good relationship with the Royal Court. And they know that they're here. So I don't think that we've been hiding anything until I came. But I felt that we shouldn't have them on display either. So as the team, we took them down and then we explained why we had taken them down, which was that we didn't want to perpetuate harm. And the harm involved on African diasporic peoples or African or even indigenous peoples about showing looted work. Until which as their future was to be decided. It has to be decided by the people who created them. So I took them down and then I called Professor Abba Tijani, who's the head of the Nigerian Council of Museums and Monuments, which the museum had had a relationship with. And I said, what do you want us to do with them? And he said, it'd be great to have them back. And then I said, well, let's see what we can do. And that's what we're doing.